Hello, and welcome to the introductory video to Average Guitar for Average People. I know I said my first video was going to be on chords, but I lied. The first video actually needs to be on what to do with your hands. So we need to start with that, and then I can talk about chords. Because the fact of the matter is, you're going to need to know how to read tab, you're going to need to know how to read a chord chart, and you're going to need to know what to do with these little guys before we can do anything else. So we're going to start with that. We're going to go over, in this order, your left hand placement, your right hand placement, i.e. how to hold a pick, and what to do with your right hand on an electric for now and an acoustic later, and then how to read tablature and how to read chord charts. All of these are valuable skills. All of these are mandatory skills. Should be a quick one, so stick around, follow along, and you should have zero problems at all positioning yourself on the guitar in a comfortable way. So let's get started. All right, so we have to figure out how to put the left hand on the guitar. It's not a complicated procedure, but it can get a little bit tricky. Let's start with the thumb. The thumb needs to be running perpendicular to your neck. Now, what I mean by that, if you passed third grade math class, you would definitely know what this means. You have to run your finger at about a 90-degree angle to your neck. So if your neck is running this way, your thumb should be running this way. So our thumb is going to be flat. Now, this part of your thumb here is the part I'm talking about. We're going to try to make that press into the back of the neck. This is going to distribute the force more evenly across the rest of our fingers. So, thumb presses into the back, and you're pretty good to go there. Now, how about the rest of the fingers? Well, that depends on what we're doing. So if we're playing chords, which that's the first thing we're going to do is play some chords, your fingers should try to be as direct as possible. You want a direct path down onto the strings. Now, you see how my thumb is poking up there? That's not always ideal, but it's not the end of the world. When you're first starting out, try to keep it flat in the back. It gives your fingers more of an angle with which to attack the strings. So the lower your thumb is, the more direct the attack your fingers will have. And it minimizes one of two problems. It minimizes one problem, and that being your fingers touching strings that they are not supposed to. So when you have the direct path, they have a much less likely chance of hitting something that they don't need to hit. And as far as your left hand is concerned, that's really about it. You want to be as direct as possible. You want to keep a nice big curve to your fingers. Your thumb should try to remain flat on the back of the neck and perpendicular to the direction the neck is going. You do not want your thumb to run alongside the neck. There is a massive amount of issues this can cause you long run. Most notably, it can damage the tendons in your wrist, and then you end up with tendonitis and you can't play anything. And that's not fun for anybody. So do yourself a favor and don't let that happen. Okay, and now for the right hand. Your right hand's job is both simpler and more complicated, depending on how you want to look at it. Let's start with how to hold a pick. Here's a pick. It's out of focus, but you can see how pointy it is, right? That's good. Picture's supposed to be pointy. So you take your thumb, right? Make a thumbs up with your right hand. You're going to take a pick, and you're going to plant it right there on your thumb. Point it to your left, your left. You want to go to your left. And then you're going to take your first finger, you're going to curl it down, and you're going to gently squeeze it between your thumb and your first finger. This gives you a nice, relaxed grip. And I can't emphasize that enough. Keep your grip relaxed. You do not want to death grip this thing, because the next part of this is keeping your wrist relaxed as well. If you grip it too loose, you're going to lose it. Grip it too tight, you're going to death grip your pick and hurt your strings and yourself. So, nice Goldilocks zone. Not too loose, not too tight. After that, we have to arrange our hand. I see a lot of people holding their hands like this, and they end up kind of doing this weird dangly motion. It's okay on an acoustic. It's not so much okay on an electric. And even on an acoustic, I'd hesitate to call it okay. As you can see here, we're dealing with an electric guitar. The pickups and the bridge style will be your giveaway. Acoustics look a little bit different. They got a big hole here. I got a little hole up here. So the next part of this is mostly important for electric players, but it does apply to acoustic players as well, is your right hand's positioning in terms of where it goes on your bridge. So you can see my middle bridge here. I'm going to take my right hand and I'm going to place this part of my palm right here just behind where the bridge goes. This is going to allow for me to move forward and get palm mutes, and backwards and let the strings ring open uninhibited. So as you are crossing these, you will move down to mute strings that you do not need active. So for example, if your left hand is doing something, anything above your left hand's fingertips will be your right hand's job to mute. And opposite is true as well. Anything below your right hand is your left hand's job to mute. So when you are moving through strings, i.e. for scales and such, it's important to know that you can move alongside the bridge. And as you're picking, you will be picking from the wrist. Do not stiff arm it. You are not doing whatever this is called. You just want to move gently with your wrist and small movements. Small movements are king. There's an exception for strumming, but we'll get to that when I talk about actually strumming. So that about covers it for the right hand. You know how to hold a pick. You know not to pick with your whole arm. You just want to use your wrist. And you want to sit just behind where the saddles are. This applies to pretty much every electric guitar. Your mileage may vary depending on how aggressively pointy your saddles are, but you do want to hang out right there. It gives you the most flexibility, the most bang for your buck. So, I do say so a lot, don't I? Mm-hmm. Welcome to the portion of the video where we talk about tabs and chord charts. So, with tablature, there's only really two things that you need to understand about this. Thing number one is the lines, your horizontal lines. Thing number two are these numbers. So as far as thing number one is concerned, they are your strings. So from bottom to top, it is thickest string to thinnest string, regardless of tuning. In this particular case, these are tuned E, A, D, G, B, and E. It doesn't really matter which tuning you're tuned to. Usually it'll detail at the very top where it says standard tuning here, which tuning you're in. It'll vary from artist to artist, genre to genre, etc. to etc. And, so on and so forth. So that's all that means. The horizontal lines are your strings. Again, from thickest to thinnest, bottom to top. Now the numbers. The numbers are your frets and or strings, depending on what numbers you see. Your 0 here, it refers to an open string. That means you are playing the string, but your left hand is not involved in the process. It is just played open. The next two numbers, well, I guess the next three numbers here, all being 2, are fretted in the second fret. So you are going to play these notes actively in the second fret of these individual strings. Now you'll notice that there's nothing here detailing which fingers need to go where. Tablature is very open to interpretation. It's a sort of like sheet music in that, like as long as you play the right note, it really doesn't matter how you approach it, so long as it gets done. Tablature will tell you which one to play. Obviously, as you can see here, it is very explicit in which fret is played, but it will not tell you which fingers do what. That is up to you to decide, and for myself or any other guitar teacher in existence to tell you where to put your fingers. So now we talk about chord charts. Chord charts are very straightforward. There is a very short checklist of things that you need to understand about these. So thing number one, what all the lines mean. Thing number two, what the numbers mean. And thing number three, what the symbols above it mean. So let's go in that order. Thing number one, the lines. Vertical lines from left to right are thick string to thinnest string. Pretty straightforward. It's like a tablature thing, but rotated 90 degrees to the right. And the horizontal lines are your frets. So these tell you where in relation to this large black bar, which equates to your nut, you will place your fingers. Pretty straightforward, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. You can count, so you can probably find your way. It's a lot like playing Battleship if you've ever done that before. Next, you have these numbers. The numbers in the circles directly refer to fingers on your left hand. So in this case, 1 being your first finger on your left hand, 2 being your middle finger, and 3 being your ring finger. Again, fairly descriptive, not too much to guess here. It pretty clearly spells out exactly where you need to place your fingers, so you shouldn't have to worry about much. Above here, we have the symbols. The, O here is exactly the same as the 0 over here. It literally just means play the open string. So whenever you see a 0 above a chord chart, that implies that that string is played open. The X implies the opposite. It implies that that string is either not played or it is played muted. As an example for what it looks like played muted, you might have something like this. It's a very messed up chord, but it is a chord. So obviously this is an extreme example. Wouldn't worry too much about that for now. You focus on stuff like this, simple, basic open chords. In addition to these chord charts, tablature does have a few more quirks that I'd like to discuss briefly. Thing number one, when you are looking at tablature, you'll notice that these numbers are stacked on top of each other. This means that these notes are played concurrently. You are playing them all at the exact same time. You look down here and you notice these notes are placed sequentially. This means that you are playing them sequentially. You're going to play them one after the other from left to right, just like you read anything in English. In addition to this, occasionally you will see more symbols, like this one, PM. PM refers to palm muting. Palm muting is a very common technique in guitar. It's used all over the place in literally every genre on earth. So if you see it, know that your right hand's palm needs to be present to mute these strings. And I'll explain that in something else. So don't worry too much about that just yet. Just understand that that does have a meaning, and it usually means palm muting. And by usually, I mean all the time it means palm muting. Outside of palm muting, occasionally you'll see something a little more like this, where it says let ring. Usually this is played where there are chords played sequentially. So instead of seeing a bunch of individual notes across that string like this, you'd see something a little bit more like this. So this would mean that all of these notes, while they are played one at a time, will be rung out together. So you would fret the chord and let it ring together instead of letting them die individually. There's plenty more symbols over here on the left. Most of them don't mean a whole lot to you just yet, and they won't for quite a while. For now, letting ring and palm muting are two of the big ones. They're really the only ones that you'll need to worry about for quite a while. So with that being said, this is the end of the basics video. If you have any other questions on anything that you see, don't hesitate to drop me a line in the comments, or just go back to the video, watch it again, make sure that everything is clear. And if it still isn't clear, then definitely shoot me a message, and I'm more than happy to help anybody that has any questions on it. I don't charge to answer questions. I think most people don't. So, it is what it is. Thank you for watching. Good luck playing. Check out my next video on open chords if you haven't already.